Benvenuti a tutti. Inauguriamo quest'oggi il ciclo di conferenze dal titolo Il punto sul paesaggio, nella edizione del 2014 che ha come particolarità il fatto che andiamo in diretta streaming. Lo facciamo con la prima conferenza di quest'oggi, il 27 marzo, con il professor Bart Brands. Seguiranno successivamente altre due conferenze primaverili, quella con Roger Narboni l'8 maggio, seguirà quella il 5 giugno con Jean-Michel Landessy. Questo nuovo modo di presentarci inaugura in sostanza il nostro nuovo modo di presentare anche le attività svolte all'interno del master. Lo facciamo quindi con l'idea che il nostro centro, ACMA, arrivato quest'anno al 20° anniversario, attraverso internet riesca a comunicare, a esporre quei contenuti in modo chiaro che abbiamo prodotto in questi anni. Quindi il master sarà un meccanismo che produrrà contenuti sull'architettura del paesaggio. Bene, detto questo, abbiamo iniziato proprio con il primo dei docenti che vengono invitati a condurre i workshop qui a Milano. Il primo docente, che è Bart Brands, che è un architetto paesaggista, ha studiato alla scuola di Boskoop e successivamente urbanistica all'Accademia di Architettura di Amsterdam. Ha ricoperto un ruolo fondamentale nella progettazione del Federal Square a Melbourne, il Købmagergade a Copenhagen e il cimitero Nieuwe Ooster di Amsterdam e lo studio di fattibilità per Cross River Park a Londra. Negli ultimi anni si è occupato principalmente di siti universitari e campus, inclusa la trasformazione del EU Campus di Amsterdam, Delft University of Technology e Science Park di Amsterdam. Svolge un ruolo importante nei maggiori progetti public-private dello studio Bart Brands, quali il piano vincitore a Utrecht, un museo a Soesterberg e il piano per il nuovo National Institute for Public Health in Environment in Utrecht. Bart è conferenziere a Berlino, a Zurigo, anche a Amsterdam, Rotterdam, a Utrecht, a Berlino ancora, Kassel, Vienna, Sydney e Bernburg. Attualmente è professore a contratto presso l'Università MIT di Melbourne. Bene, detto questo, abbiamo comunque disponibilità sul suo sito internet di visitare la quantità di progetti realizzati dallo studio in questi anni ed è sicuramente tra i più apprezzati architetti del paesaggio in Europa. Lascio quindi la parola a Bart Brands per illustrare la sua lezione, la sua conferenza, dal titolo Il tempo è il mio strumento, l'architetto invisibile.
Okay. Thank you, Antonio, for introducing me, and thank you for inviting me to give a lecture. Is everything with the sound fine? You just mentioned the title of my lecture, and I took the liberty to change that this afternoon. Sorry for that, because I changed it into playtime. And I got two reasons for that. One is time. I think, and we had some discussions already today, time is the most important instrument of landscape architecture. And play means landscape is fun, landscape is fascinating. And if you combine those two, fascinating and time, you start thinking like a landscape architect. So I think those two words are the key message I like to give to you. Fascination about landscape, and learn that the factor time is your most important tool. I do a short introduction about our office. I'll show you quickly a couple of projects, and then I'd like to talk about something else. This is the office. We are based in Hilversum, close to Amsterdam. We are always between 25 and 30 people. We got different people. We've got landscape architects, we've got graphic designers, architects, urban planners, in a team, a young team, and the office is mostly English spoken. We do different projects, from urban space till parks, of course, till regional plans. Here you can see the headquarters of the military. In Holland, we just won like a public-private partnership, a cemetery in Amsterdam. A couple of years ago, I think almost 10 years ago, we did a competition together with lab architects and won Federation Square in Melbourne. That's also the reason why I'm still teaching there, and I love the country, so I like to go there. But also cemetery again, urban plans, strategical plans, public spaces, interior gardens. A project. This is the station in Copenhagen. We did a competition for, and the main street, shopping street in Copenhagen. Very nice. A zoo and aquarium on an island in Holland. A project in Lithuania, an urban plan, military of defense, the campus in Amsterdam. But also small details like fence and furniture, bridges, plan in Oslo, a plan in a campus in Leuven University. We're working together with Daniel Libeskind at the moment to make the campus plan. And the plan we won the competition with was dealing with water and how can we purify water and the whole water management on the campus itself. Can we integrate that in the public space of a campus? Probably they thought we could, so we won the competition and we have to start building next year. Roof gardens, parks, a campus in Copenhagen. This is the biggest roof. There's a 5-layer parking garage under that park. We built the whole park only in 40 centimeters deep, including again the water. Different projects, schools, Cross River Park in London, Hauseplatz in Copenhagen, Taiwan, Federation Square, an art project, the cemetery, the new main street of Copenhagen. Okay, that's our project. I'd like to talk about Holland. I'd like to talk about my background, our background, because looking at our plans, and I will show you 2 projects in the end. Looking at our plans, I think you have to understand the context we are working in Holland. It's completely different, I think, from Italy. And also the history, how we landscape architects developed in the history of Holland and what our role was in developing and designing Holland. I think it's also different than Italy. And I think from that perspective, you have to look at these projects, these 2 projects I will show you. Just a small how do you call it? Correspondence between the 2 countries, Holland and Italy. You can see the size. We are a little bit smaller. We both have a government and a constitutional. We have a parliamentary representative, and you have a constitutional republic. You can see that we are roughly 6-7 times smaller. You got roughly 2.4% water, and we got a little bit more than 18% of water. And we are 16 million and a half, and you are almost 60 million. So we are double the density. So just to put things in perspective a little bit, where we come from. So we are a very small, low, high-dense country with a lot of water. And you will see that, because if you take the plane to Holland, you fly over these kinds of landscapes, which are fascinating, beautiful landscapes, especially when the sun is shining. But if you look at it, you think, how can you live in a country like this? How can you work in a country like this? Why do these stupid Dutch people live here? Why didn't they move a little bit more east? So flying down again with the same plane, a little bit lower, you can get this kind of almost imaginary images, where you think, what is real? But this is a real picture. It's just the layering of the landscape, of water, of infrastructure, of building structures, just based on top of each other because of its density. And why is that? Why do we have so much water? Holland is the little hole in your bathtub from whole Europe. All the big rivers, the Rhine and the Maas and all the rivers flow to Holland. We're at the deepest point, so we get all the water from Germany and France and Switzerland for a part. It comes all the way. And at the lowest point, you can see we are in a delta. So we are low, we are wet, and we get a lot of water. And we're getting more and more water, because like every country in Europe, people are building more cities, more streets, more paved areas, so we'll get more water. And here you can see how it works with the contours in Holland. You can see the existing outlines of Holland. I think I'm going to... This is the whole of Holland. This is the dunes. Amsterdam is roughly here. And this part of the Holland is below sea level. So roughly 50% of our country is really below sea level. Again, why should we live there? I'll try to ask. If you haven't done anything at all, Holland would look like this. Part would be sea, 50% would be land, and I'm very happy because I live here. So if the dikes break, my garden is on the beach. But of course I don't hope so, because this is the most dense population, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Den Haag. This is where most people of Holland live. But just to give a suggestion, so how does it work? What happened? How does this country develop? This is from my first book at elementary school. You had the dinosaurs, and then the first farmers came, and they start to make their farming and their agricultural production. And because of the flooding, they built a little hill, and they put their farm on there. So when the water came, they were safe. And then they said, with a couple of farmers together, let's make it a little bit bigger, so we're safe. But of course, that your land constantly floods is a little bit irritating. So then they joined their forces and they start building dikes to have this area is not flooding so often. And then it became higher, of course, the water level is raising, and then you make a dike, and again, in the system, you make a water system. So we collect the water in the system and pump it out over the dike, back to the rivers and back to the sea. Very simple. And that generates beautiful pictures. You know, still in Holland, in the north of Holland, we got villages like this. 5, 6 houses, always around the church, on a hill. First, I don't think I have to explain that Holland is flat. It's completely flat. We don't have hills. If we got something about 2 or 3 meters, we call it a hill or a mountain. Holland is flat. So in that way, we have this beautiful old villages in the north of Holland, where you can see the occupation of the landscape, the farms, the drier fields for their own production, and then the grass fields for the cattle and the cows. And still beautiful, the churchyards, of course, because if you want to bury your people, you don't want to do that in the water, so you have to do it at the raised areas. So you constantly are, whatever you do, production, thinking about people who died, your beloved ones, you have to think about at which level you operate. And that's still in our DNA. We always think, when we start a project, at which level I am. Am I up? Am I down? Am I 1 meter down? Am I 1 meter up? Because that determines how we manage the landscape, how we deal with urbanization, how we deal with roads, how we deal with infrastructure. And that already started. You know, the examples I showed started in the 15th century. People had the necessity to build these dikes and build these hills by collective. So it means already in the 15th century, we had a kind of democracy. It is the oldest democracy form in the world, just by necessity. If you didn't work together, the water came and would flood. So already there they had elections, and they elected what we call the head of the water bound. And we still have that. So still, we have to have elections in Holland every 4 years, but for our water boards. And they're very important in Holland. It's almost an invisible force. If you look at the map of Holland nowadays, you can see these blue areas are our different water boards. That means they are responsible of the whole water management of that region. The red lines are the regions. So the red line is a political line, and the blue line is a water management line. And it sounds strange, but the blue line is more important than the red line. Of course, here the politicians have all their plans and their ideas, but you can see that things cross the border, like here, and they determine, the water boards determine where we should build and where we're not allowed to build, and where we should raise the dikes, and where we should make new reservoirs for water and rainwater collection. So it's almost an impossible layer under the political structure that determines the spatial planning of Holland for a big part. And I'm very curious how that is here in Italy, but in Holland it's very important, this very old democratical institution. And you can vote for this water board, and half of the people are civilians. So it's not politicians. 50% is technicians, 50% is civilians. So it's really about keeping your own place dry. So they're more important than, spatial-wise, than the politicians. Here you can see the same map. The other one was a diagram, but this is really a map how you can see here the levels. So roughly this whole area of Holland is below sea level. These are some new areas. This is almost one of the deepest points near Rotterdam. And here are some big polder areas which are roughly, say, 4 meters below sea level. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, how we made them. And also tell them a little bit more about how the landscape architect came already in that period on board in designing the landscape. This is the first drawings about the first old polders. Of course, a system of water ditches, a place where roads connect, so we need some bridges. We already did some planting. No, it was a sea bottom. So here already the technicians start, and this is our background. We come from a technical engineering, civil engineering, designing position. You can see in history later that the bigger these polders come, the more and more planning and design was done. But there was no architects involved. It was engineers, and later on the engineers became engineers landscape architects. And they were designing this new land. And then later on in the cities, the architects were doing the buildings and parts of the urban planning. But the main frame, the main basic form was done by engineers, later on engineers / landscape architects. Because otherwise, this is a picture, I think, from 1400. Why would we already start drawing trees and making spots and making centers? And here you can see quite good how this piece, this is a zoom in of the west of Holland. This is the first rings of Amsterdam, the fortification. Amsterdam, the city built on water, on big poles with all the canals. But here you can see it was a landscape of inundation, big lakes that flood once in a while and came over, smaller lakes. And here you can really see that some of the lakes, they put a dike around and they put some windmills there and they pump the water out and start using them as small agricultural production machines for Amsterdam. Very close by, small scale. They went with boats and brought their vegetables and the milk and the dairy stuff to Amsterdam. Very economical, from an economical point of view, very efficient. Small scale near to Amsterdam. And here you can see the little bigger scale. So after that century, in the next centuries, they start making more and more of these kind of polders. You can see the dikes, and then slowly every small piece becomes part of a drier area. Here again Amsterdam, and here is Hilversum, where our office is. And you also had big lakes. They were too big to make into a polder, and they are used for a long time, long centuries, for fishery, and also for food production for Amsterdam. Just to show how beautiful Amsterdam is. So if you ever go to Holland, visit Amsterdam, but you can see this IJ River. There used to be a dam over a river. Here is the Amstel River. There used to be a dike, and this is where Amsterdam started and grow with its canals, with the first fortifications, and then spread on later in the landscape if we could manage the water better. And we thought we could do it so good. Let's try Manhattan. This is the little point of Manhattan. I don't know if people know that Manhattan was first New Amsterdam, owned and started with the Dutch. You can see the canals. It's just a typical Amsterdam canal sections they made there with typical Amsterdam buildings. And I think we sold it for the English for €1, 1 gulden. So we were not so clever at that time. But you can see if you zoom out, and you also zoom out in scale, and I zoom out in time. Again, here you can see Amsterdam, Haarlem, Hilversum is here, and you can see slowly we're getting better into making these polders. Also, we're getting more and more in contact with the technique. and the technique became better. No? First we did it with hand, then we started doing with a horse. Slowly we get a steam engine. In this case, the scale became bigger and the techniques became bigger. You can see that, these were the small ones for the first ones, but we also start poldering a lot of big areas here in the north of Holland. Huge scale, many hectares areas for production landscape. You can see, and we improved the technique. First we did it by a little mill, and suddenly we also start, putting windmills in Syria. And then we connect them, and then they go to another level, and then there's another level of windmills putting it to the other level. So it's just engineering, putting these things and making also that it goes in steps and it's more safe, and at the same time creating these beautiful landscapes, quite characteristics of the west of Holland. And it becomes bigger and bigger, and it's as a landscape architect, I can see of every picture of the polder in which period it's made, by the scale, by the size, and how original still the dike is, or how big the plots are. You can see in which time of mechanization we are living. And also here you can see it's a completely new land. This was sea bottom or lake bottom, and we had to design main streets. We had to start thinking about how the farm should be integrated in the landscape with planting. How do we do it with transport? Is it big enough to make a new town? So the engineers and slowly on the landscape architects came in and started designing these completely new landscapes. Also here, a beautiful map. A lot of these polders are UNESCO heritage now, completely protected. You cannot do so much more in these areas. But here again, you can see, and also reading this beautiful map of a polder in Holland, you can see where the land is drier because the scale is bigger. The land is more wet because you can see more water streams. We need to pump more water away. Or even here near a town where there were smaller lots because people had more, say, a really agricultural production close to the city. And this maybe was more for cows or more for, say, cabbage and potato production. So also looking at these maps, you can see which production was where. It's almost like a genetic scheme of the landscape. Of course, we progressed. We started, instead of these windmills, very inefficient, of course, beautiful but inefficient, we started using steam engines, so we could pump out bigger lakes. We could pump out more water. This was the lake I just showed you near Amsterdam. So now with the steam engines, we could start pumping this big lake, also empty, and start making again an agricultural landscape, providing and producing food for Amsterdam and other cities. Collashing beautiful with some of the original pieces of the landscape still at some areas and the dune area on this side. And this is a principle that works a little bit exaggerated. So the lowest polders, they pump in their bosom waters, as we call them. They pump to other systems. They pump to other systems, and they pump to the main system that's there, and they pump it away. So it's not that if the dikes breaks, whole Holland will be flooded, because it always will be flooded in compartments, and then we can hopefully control it. So this living with the water and working with water, we always are protecting it and reclaiming it to become land. Big part of it is also that when we found out, and it was dry, in some areas we had turf and peat in the bottom. You know, the sedimentation of the sea bottom, leaves and things will fall down on the sea bottom. The moment you dig them out and dry them, they're perfect for in your fireplace. So we could dig out in the landscape and make these things, turf blocks we call them, and they were used in the winter for heating up your house. And again, that gave this kind of landscape. That means you can say here the old dike with the farms. They were allowed to occupy the lands and start growing their crops as far as they could come to hit somebody else. And then, of course, later on, the son would heritage the farm, the grandfather, or he had 2 sons or 3 sons, and they split the land again. And they went on for generations. So in the end, a lot of people have pieces of land which is 30 meters wide and 6 kilometers long, all the way back. And you can see here that they start digging out this peat. So they start digging out this fuel for the winter, then the wind came in the water, and it became water again. So it was polder, it was water, we made it into a polder, dig it out, it became water again. And of course, again, technical abilities became better and better. We can see the first tractors coming. We start learning how to work the land on a bigger scale, and we start reforming the land. And this is also one of the things I also like to say in the scope of this workshop we're having together. We are used in Holland to every time write a new layer on top of the landscape, which is not always bad. No, it's not that we should look at the landscape as something we have to protect. Sometimes we can make it better. So we have to really look every layer. What are we adding? What are we keeping from the past? What do we like to celebrate? And what can be changed? So this is a way of looking at landscape in a different way than what should be preserved, what should be protected. Oh, that's a limited way of looking at the landscape. And here you can see, this was the old more way of growing. You can see the village here. You can see the pieces of land where the cows were. The cows were transported with boats. You had to get the cows in the boat and then transport them to the farm. And very inefficient and difficult. And he had a little piece of land there and there and there. So we just redo it. This is much more efficient. So you can see that we change the landscape constantly. Also here, I think this is a very nice picture. An old village with the old small farms. This was the old landscape in the polder. We need a lot of water to manage it. Now we got better techniques, so we just do it like this. This area was like that. We just changed it. This is now the main road outside the village. Production, you can see the farms becoming bigger to do the bigger fields. Again, it is a layer over a layer over a layer. In that way, farmers made a big piece of Holland as well. Completely economical driven in that way. Or by example, in the east of Holland, where we have the peat areas, which was for a long time we could not manage to occupy because it was just too tough work. But with the new machines, new techniques, it was possible. And we designed completely new cities to occupy this rough landscape. You can see we made 2 canals. In the middle, you can see all the small houses. That's where the people that worked in the field are living. And then on the side, you can see the big farms, where the big farm owners were living, with the big farms. All planned, all set up. So sometimes you drive in Holland, you drive through a village, and this is the city center. Completely based on an agricultural production system, transforming the landscape. And now they're beautiful cities. The trees become bigger, the farms got planted. They're very also popular to start living there. Moving from the west, buying a farm, and use as residential area again. Sometimes it goes wrong, so that keeps us awake. Every time something happens, we panic a little bit and like to start building on higher dikes or trying to manage the water in a different way. Of course, water is not only the enemy. We have to fight and protect ourselves against, or we should use it to reclaim land. We also use the water. Water is one of the best ways to defend ourselves, in our little wet country. So we got beautiful fortifications like this. Is Naarden, near to Hilversum, where we are. It's a fortification, all based on the Italian ways of making fortifications with the cannons and the rings and everything, and the water around in 3 rings, and to protect us from, by example, the Spanish in that period. So we could use the water, and we did that in a way that this is one of the biggest defense mechanisms in the world. It is comparable with the Chinese wall. You can see it from a satellite. And this is a series of, all the red points, is this series of these fortifications all the way around Amsterdam. All the way around. And they worked on it for many, many years. It's one of the biggest defense constructions in the world, and it means the idea was, and by the way, we got another one. We got one through the middle of Holland, from Amsterdam, here's Amsterdam, all the way along Utrecht to the south. So we had a ring of defense around Amsterdam and a ring defense from north to east. We didn't know from which side the enemy would come, to be sure. And all these fortifications were in fact locks. So what could they do? The moment the enemy would come, they would turn open the lock. These areas would be inundated, flooded, and we hoped that the enemy got stuck in the mud with their cannons and their horses. I think it took 100 years to build. It's never used because after 100 years, of course, no, this is a joke, but of course, when it freezes, it doesn't work. But after when this thing was finished, they invented the airplane. So they flew over it and could drop the bombs on our head. So it's never used, and at the same time, it's a landscape, beautiful landscape feature that it's almost incomparable. It varies in 1 or 2 meters. So subtle is it. And these fortresses are like treasures in the landscape. You know, they are now renovated, most of them. They get new functions. This is in this town I just showed you is a museum, and under the fence, this is all. You can walk underneath. No? It's all fortifications. You can walk underneath there. These museums more and more are turned over by Rietveld landscape architects in cultural institutes, places for events, places for manifestations, restaurants, and we got this whole series of jewels in the landscape based on this fortification. So in that way, it never worked in the way it should be, and now we're using it completely in another way, and it's a very attractive route and infrastructure for people that have a day off, or bicycle, or tourist infrastructure. The next step again, a bigger scale. You can see here again Amsterdam, the north of Holland, and the plan to even this big lake in Holland, which was sea, salt water. We built a dam. To be honest, now it's fresh water, and we made those two, this one as well, and we made those two big polders. This one is not built yet. I think it will never be built, but those two are built. Again, one scale up, one scale bigger. We closed that big part of the sea. If you bicycle here, in Holland they say you always have the wind against you. So if you bicycle 35 kilometers that way against the wind, you turn around, the wind also turns and blows again in your face. So it's closed, of course. Now we got boats, bigger machines. I would say this is me. No, it's not true. But at that time, you know, we get these huge pieces of land, and people in the east of Holland on this heavy clay ground and heavy peat ground, they were asked, "Do you want to come here and start a farm?" People had to fill in questionnaires if you had the right spirit to conquer the new land, and you are extremely proud because you have your new tractor, and you have got your own farm. So this is a pioneer country for Holland. And there it was so big we needed new towns. So we had there, and also in this area you can see that there are landscape architects involved, working on new towns. And these were architects, landscape architects, and artists. By example, Mondriaan, inspired by the artists like Mondriaan, and this is the art, the style. So the different artist groups who had a cultural kind of engagement start making towns. A collective of architects, urban planners, landscape architects start thinking about new social coherence of these new towns on the former sea bottom. And they are built, and they are at the moment still almost like examples and laboratories of urban planning and landscape architecture. But also how the roads are, the ways, the planting, the forest. There is now in the sea bottom, former sea bottom, beautiful forest where people go for recreational and make walks on Sunday, which was between 40 and 30 years ago at the bottom of the sea. Oh. And also very nice, you know, this was this sea area, and there were some islands in the sea, and now you can see these islands back in the polder. It's beautiful remembering of what it used to be. Again, this layering. It used to be an island, now it's in the land, and it's in this very rational polder, a beautiful area, recognizable from history, like a print in history. And again, you can see it here, the difference between the sea level and the polders. So this is roughly, say, 4 meters, sometimes 5 meters below sea level. So also all technical institutes and machinery we need is much bigger. And we started making new towns. 2 big towns, Lelystad and Almere. In the biggest towns in this polder is now Almere, where you can see all the this is the Centrum Barem Koolhaas, Sana Museum, tour. So this is huge new city. I think it's city number 3 or 4 in Holland at the moment, on this former sea bottom, 20 minutes away by train from Amsterdam. So this is in how short you can change the landscape. So that does also something with your professional intuition. And this dike, this dike we built many years ago, we need to renew it and make it a little bit higher. So of course there's plans to renew it, but in combination with ecological reservations, with something we can use to make energy, because the difference between salt and fresh water, you can do it in an osmosis process and make electricity from that. So again, everything we look at from the engineering point of view, can we combine the civic engineering with landscape, with ecology, and also with profit? The profit is not a dirty word. In that way, can this also be new development? Can it generate money that generates something else, an extra value for the landscape? So this is a plan. It's not where the city of the country is working on making this dike not only a defense system, but also an energy generator, a place to live, a place to have an ecological framework, and a place to maybe have some residential potentials. This is a plan by West 8 along a dike. Why just enlarge the dike? Why cannot we make a completely new city, including a big ecological delta? And still it goes wrong once in a while. This has one of the biggest disasters in Holland in '53. A big part of the south of Holland flooded, and unfortunately a lot of people died. That also made, in that period, '53, that the government of Holland decided to really make a flood defense on this side. This is the Rotterdam southwest side. You can see delta. This is where the rivers come. This is where you go to Antwerp, to Belgium, and we decided to make a flexible flood defense all along this coast. So one we can open, one we can close, let water in if we need it, protect the water, keep the water out if we need it. And these are huge infrastructural works, like bridges, new artificial islands, locks, big locks we can close to keep the water out, or keep the salt water out sometimes, high water. This is underneath the water. So this whole layering of the water, this is what I said, this is in our genes, this is how we deal with Holland. And of course we don't only have water as an infrastructure. We got different infrastructures. We got road infrastructure, we got ecological infrastructures. And this again, on this small little country, all stacked together. And it means also something in our role as a landscape architect. We always have to start thinking about stratification, about layering, about using things double. Because if one thing only has one function in Holland, it's a waste of square meters. So we like to do that everything has at least multiple programmable uses. And this is of course these rivers that bring us all this water. Of course also made us to one of the biggest harbors in Europe. I think we're the biggest in Europe and number 3 in the world, Rotterdam. And we are having the big ships, and then we bring them to these ships, and these ships sail into Germany, into France, and spread the goods in France. So in that way, it always has, everything has a negative and a positive side. We're fighting the water, we're living with the water, and we're also living from the water. So again, we need these big structures by high water, that we can start closing down rivers. And have these locks, because we're going stream up into Germany to make this transportation possible. And of course then you got the rail infrastructure on top of that, the normal infrastructure on top of that. Sometimes it goes wrong. And the ecological structure on top of that. In Holland we have what we call the ecological main structure of Holland, supported by the government, where we like to combine a lot of ecological valuable areas together and connect them for the migration and the biodiversity. So, but of course we constantly have this friction with infrastructure and with railroads and with water. So now we start vlechten, I don't know what the word is, but start interweaving these infrastructures, water infrastructure. So we are making a lot of these aqueducts everywhere in Holland, where we start combining nature and fauna passages, as we call them, over highways, over big railroad emplacements. This is in Hilversum, sometimes designed, sometimes almost hidden, making possible that animals and fauna can have this migration through different areas in Holland and start connecting them. Depends a little bit on which government is in power, how much money goes to these things. But I think it's quite important. And so after all this layering, this was this polder I showed you near Amsterdam, this big one, where here's Amsterdam, where we finally could polder that. And slowly it became, what I said, it became an agricultural polder. It became really an efficient agricultural machine. And slowly it started to fill. You can see here 2 big cities are now in this polder. Main highways are connecting it, and our national airport is here in the middle of this polder. So this polder became, it's a completely machine, a landscape machine of agriculture, production, logistics, transport, residential, and now we are even building here a new park. So this landscape is the only fixed thing with this landscape is that it's constantly changing. Probably we'll have another layer on top of this in another 10 years. So landscape is not standing still. Landscape is constantly moving, constantly changing. Again, it was this. And then you get this strange kind of things whereby this ring around the dike, the infrastructure, the highways, we have to start weaving them. And also the airport and the highways, we have to start weaving them. And then the whole water system. So you get a very, and I personally think, a quite fascinating landscape of different kinds of infrastructures, which is also called water and landscape and infrastructure, weaving through each other and creating quite unexpected influences and making new kinds of typologies of landscape. Of course, also not always positive. Also, this is also along the highway, for example, between Utrecht and Amsterdam. You can see here the highway. There is the train track. Here is the high power. Here is somebody who thought, let's make a Chinese restaurant with a big parking area. And look, this is the poor guy. The windmill is still standing there. That's the last frontier of the old landscape. So sometimes, you know, these pictures I think is fascinating, and at the same time, it also should ring a bell. This picture made me think a little bit about our site visit from yesterday, where we looked at this landscape here south of Milan, where all the fragments lie in this landscape like a car accident. You know, just scattered with assumably no reason, just back to back. So I think we got a very interesting workshop in the coming days. So you can see that, you know, this poor guy, you know, the urbanization is coming, the infrastructure, this is a new highway is coming. Slowly we start realizing we like this landscape, we always changed it, but maybe we should now start thinking about how far we can go. So slowly these little pieces of landscape that are still left become almost like museum fragments. Suddenly this is all, you know, this is thousands of Japanese people come here every month. Thousands, they love it. And we also love it. Now this is when Holland gets crazy, when we can ice skate, everybody gets crazy. We go there. So suddenly we got these pockets of landscape which we're suddenly, oh, let's preserve this completely. It's such a part of our cultural and our identity. But it's not even preserving. No, we go further than that. It's not that we have areas, let's say, let's protect them and don't touch them. No, we even start arranging the polders again. So these areas that we 30, 40 years ago, with a lot of effort, pumped dry and made into efficient agricultural landscapes, we start making natural landscapes again in them. You know, this is a natural area that was never poldered. Here is a forest, and we start completely taking the landscape, the agricultural part out, and turn it into an ecological landscape. So it's a new layer on top, new layer, bringing back all things and start using them in another way. You know, recreational use, and of course, we do it for the ecological frame, the ecological structural plan of Holland, that these animals can migrate. And you get the strange pictures like, you know, this was a polder, very efficient, it was a sea bottom, we made it into a polder, made it efficient, and now we made it back into natural area. You can still see parts of the polder. And the only thing that you can see on this picture that is still left over is the train track from Hilversum to Amsterdam. So if you're sitting in this train, you're thinking that you're driving to a completely natural, original landscape of Holland. It's not true. It's completely man-made, completely turned back into. And then even we have wild animals. Not wild, but we don't have wildlife in Holland. No? We got mouses and deers. That's it. And now we have these cows. We let run free. And last year we saw a wolf. We're very happy that the car killed it, but we are very happy that maybe the wolf will come back one day to Holland. What I said, the water is. We work with water. Water is in our DNA. It's in our daily life, and of course also what I said. We got one of the biggest harbors in the world, Rotterdam, which is here. You can see the city center of Rotterdam, and this is the whole harbor area, which is not big enough. So we made an artificial island to make more harbor areas in front of the coast to welcome this kind of ships from China. Well, anyway, this is Denmark. Sorry. And making these new harbor areas, first phase and the second phase, into the sea to do that. And by doing that, even going a step further. You know, we're almost on the edge of what some people call geoengineering. It means interfering in a landscape and starts changing your landscape in a natural way. But by example, this is our coastal defense, the dunes, and we have to add sand every year, just to keep these dunes in shape for the sea, because we are below the sea level. This is an idea where we have new artificial islands in front of the coast to change the currency of sea streams, so sedimentation would take place along this coast. So instead of that we have to add extra sand to the dunes every year, nature will do it themselves. We just have to build some artificial islands in front of the coast. When a politician gets that idea, politicians always, then they think about Dubai and maybe we should make a tulip. But the idea is very fascinating. I'll just show you a project of ourselves. Lineke van Kampen from our office did it. This is an island in the north, and the same thing. This is dunes, and we have to add extra sand every year. We bring a ship out, they pump sand from the sea bottom on top of the dunes to reinforce them and make them stronger. And this is a sandbank. And we said, is it possible to make a big ship and cut this sandbank in two? Really make a big ditch in there. And then the currency will do this. We get two islands, and the stream will start doing this. So by making a big major intervention in the landscape, in this case the sea landscape, we reinforce the dunes. So we speed up natural processes and change them. So you can see how far you can go. And still, once in a while, it goes wrong. And that's also why we have to start living more and more with water. We have to start dealing more with the fact that our water will change. We are in this delta. Instead of now starting protecting us and defending us more, we start living with it, living with the water. That means less land, more houses. That means less gardens, more relationship with the water. The water is your public space. The boat is your garden. This is the plan of West 8 in Amsterdam, where the old harbor area is transformed, and to be honest, not much public space, very high density, but the water area is your public space. As all the events are on the water in Amsterdam, concerts, but also building new islands. Now this is Eiburg, north of Amsterdam, completely new city. There was nothing. Amsterdam could not grow bigger. They made an artificial island. They made a tram. Public transport is essential. And they built, this is 2002, 2004, 2010. Completely new city in the water. Completely new land connected to Amsterdam. And still once in a while it goes wrong, so we have to go further. Artificial islands is not enough. And at the same time, we are in this country, our bottom is still sinking, and there is global warming, despite what people are saying. So the seawater level is rising. So we are in Holland, the bottom is getting drier and drier and sinking, and the seawater level is rising. So we are on this not very nice balance. And also, same problem probably as Italy, more and more urbanization. So more and more you have to deal with the peaks of your rainwater and your stormwater. Because the rural areas are still concentrating their own landscape, but the cities are not anymore. So we need to help each other. The periods of rain will be less but more heavier, and we have more periods of drought. So the peaks will be bigger. That's the result of the climate change. And we have to be prepared for that. So that means that in all the plans we are doing now, urban planning, landscape planning, the water and the space for water and rivers plays a role. This is a plan, I think it's literally called Space for the River, where this is the old town, the existing river. We need to have more space, so the river will start also making here more space, so we can deal with the flooding and the peak situations from the water that comes from Germany, and at the same time take that opportunity and create new possibilities for city planning, urban planning, and recreational and ecological potentials we can use. So by making this need to deal with the water also a possibility to change the landscape in a good way. Or finding places where, when the big river is too high, we can start inundate areas to lower the water in the rivers. Again, this can also create beautiful recreational areas and also areas with a very high level of biodiversity. And the last thing we're trying to do is maybe we should make floating cities. We can even defend ourselves, or we can go higher. There will be a limit. So maybe we have to start finding systems where we can go with the flow, literally, because otherwise we better could move to Germany. So this is a very small experiment in Eiburg in Amsterdam where these houses float. So they go with the water. We are so well known for our houseboats, but this is floating cities. I'm not talking about the architecture, but again, this is also an Eiburg. This is private customers. They build their own house. You get the concrete deck. You're living in a kind of water city, but you are floating. So you go with the flow in the water. And this will be the future. Now this is a project. This is not an accident. You know, the other ones I showed was an accident. This is on purpose. These people live in the side beds of the river. Normally, when there is no water, they can drive here with the car, the road, and park in front of the house. And we can predict when the high water is coming. You can predict it a couple of days before. If the high water is coming, they park on the central parking area there. And these houses are on columns. So they go up and down. And then you only have to go there with your boat. And maybe that's the way we have to deal in this part of Holland, by start making cities and living. And of course, as a landscape architect and also designer of public space, everything in Holland should have this, what I said, this double function. This is a plan of the Urbanistica in Rotterdam. They became very famous with this plan. It's a water square. It's a playground for kids where they can play, and it's very high intensity of water for rainfall. This square will buffer the first peaks of rainwater. It's just finished in Rotterdam. It's a nice experiment, so I'm very curious how it's going to work. But we cannot design public space anymore without thinking how to deal with water. It's the first question we always ask. And that also means that it also creates very nice areas. Oh, so they have fun. Okay, I'll show you two plans quickly. And but just I need to tell you this, because this is the background how we think. And it means that we got a couple of statements. Nothing is impossible. It's a mindset. You know, you can do everything. You can make your own land, you can reclaim it from the sea, you can live it, you can transform it. As a landscape architect, we always say in the office, the first thing, nothing is impossible. It's completely free thinking. The second one, as in the 15th century, you never do it alone. You know, landscape architecture has nothing to do with ego. You know, if you want to do it good, you have to collaborate with all the stakeholders that are there. It's also a mindset. In Holland, also the politicians do it, and we got a name for it, and we call it the polder model of this poldering. It means that even if you are not on the same line of thoughts, together you have to find a way out. So we always collaborate. I mentioned that, stratification, layering, everything should have more functions than one. And also acknowledge and understand that every time you write a new layer on top of the landscape, which is not always bad. So it's not only, it can also enhance the best parts of the landscape. Writing layer of layer and program of a program. That makes it efficient and it makes it sustainable. Time is our tool. You know, and this is what I mean with time. It is, as a landscape architect plants a tree, the tree is big when I'm dead. Huh? So I'm not so interested in the end result. I'm more interested in all these times between. Because on my drawing, this tree is big and mature, but I will never see it. And probably 2 or 3 generations that live in my plan will never see it in that way. So a landscape architect, also in the old days, he draw a kind of possible end image. I would like to have this garden or this city or this fortification like this. And then he made what they call maintenance plans, what I call designs, for every year, every 5 year, or every 10 year between, showing what he could do. And he's also changing it. You know, he is. You can come back after 10 years and see something that is different than you predicted, which is quite normal. Huh? That something is different than you predicted, and then you can react on it. So you make much more open-ended plans, and this in-between time is even more important than the end result. It's a kind of open-ending planning, you know, not fixed on an end result, but more interested in the process. And then, of course, you hope that something happens you never know. You know, master plans that are completely fixed also exclude all things that happen that you could not think about. So we always hope that things in our plan goes wrong. Because very often, if you can grab that and use it as an extra effect in your plan, the plan becomes more richer. And the more it is a kind of top-down master plan, the more you eliminate these kinds of surprises. So it's a kind of, I always say it's a kind of balance between a kind of control and a kind of laissez-faire. Sometimes you also think, you know, it's Northern Europe versus Southern Europe. If we mix them together, it could be great. You know, it's control. We are a little bit control freaks. I think here in Italy, you can enjoy life much more than we do. If you can combine those two kind of things, control and laissez-faire, in landscape architecture, it would be great. So, you know, it is not about just implementing a chosen aesthetic, but carefully guiding something. It's like raising your children. That's how you do it in a landscape. You let it grow, you let it develop, you steer, you guide, you help, sometimes you no. And that's the way, in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, you make a landscape plan. It's not like, boom. It's like a director. It is. Instead of you make a plan, you make a script. And the script is a kind of general direction of where you go, and the actors make the difference. The actors can be actors, but the actors can also be citizens, can be politicians, can be developers. They change, they work with your script, they influence your script to make your film, your movie, or your landscape, or your plan better. So the role of the landscape architect, you know, is not a master planner, but is more a director. Together with his actors, he makes this movie. Like this very old guy, very famous landscape of Holland. He came back every year, killed trees, moved plants, changed it, made a road there, came back next year and see what happened, and reacted on that. And this is another one. I said traditional zoning plan kills every innovation. I just put this one in after the presentation of yesterday, where we talked about the zoning plan. You know, zoning plans as they are described nowadays, also in Holland, they exclude instead of include. They always say, you cannot do this here. I think we should rephrase it, and for every area say, you can do everything here as long as you compensate your CO2 emissions, or solve your own water management, or contribute to ecological connections. It's another way of thinking. You can do everything if you contribute, instead of saying, no, not allowed here, because you frustrate everybody. like those two ladies. You know, in the zoning plan they said no terrace on the street. It's there, but they have a good time. And they don't bother anybody. So I think I got 20 minutes left, 15 minutes. I'd like to show you two projects shortly, and they have got everything to do with what I've just been telling you about. It has to do slowly building up a plan, let a plan grow, not make an instant design or an instant identity, but try a place and let them develop themselves their own quality, and let people use it and let people work on it, because they are my actors. I warn you, I showed two projects who failed. They went wrong, but that's bad. That's good. This is a park. We were asked, I think 8 years ago, to design a park in a neighborhood like this. This is what we call new neighborhoods in Holland. I think this is a neighborhood of 13,000 houses, residential mainly, and all the places where you could not build because the ground was polluted, they're called a park. Now, that's very normal in urban planning. You can see it everywhere. You build, and then the places where it's too noisy, or it's polluted, or close to the highway, oh, let's make it a park. It's the wrong reason to plan a park somewhere, but that's very often how it happens. Same here. So they asked us, could we make a park? We really would like that, and these neighborhoods, this is how it looked when we started. This was the master plan of the neighborhood. This is our park. And when we were asked to design the park, this neighborhood was not there yet. It was completely landscape, Dutch landscape. But we know these neighborhoods. You know, in other towns, this is what is being built. It looks very interesting, but it's only facade. It's multifunctional, middle class. You know, the houses look different, but it's all the same square meters, same topology, nothing much different. And then you got, you know, all the streets and public spaces conform all the rules about playgrounds, about maintenance, about cleaning, about the police, about women's safety, you know, everything. So all these neighborhoods are completely predictable, not excited, boring areas. Some people call these neighborhoods the ghetto of the future. And we're building them now, so that's dangerous. So we said, you know, the only way these areas are interesting and exciting for a park and for children and a playground is if they are in progress and they are building it. Because then you can explore, then you can discover. Then, you know, you find a little corner where you can kiss your girlfriend for the first time. Yeah? In the other, you cannot do it. So we like to make a very adventurous spot where this is still possible. And our working title was Open Due to Construction. So what we said, we're not going to make a completely drawing, build the park, put a fence around it, build the park, and then wait till it's completely finished, and then open, cut the ribbon, and then it's finished. No? We'll open the park from day one. Well, there is no park yet. Then we start building the park slowly, and then we see how people use the park, and we react on that again. Like the old guy I just showed before, or like the director does. The actors come in, the actors start moving, start changing our plan. They maybe redesign a path here, and they start making another path, then we change the path. If they like something, they get it more. If they don't like something, we'll take it away. So it is a park that will grow by itself. And what we did, we just made this kind of topography plan. We didn't have so much money for this park. We needed much more money, we thought. We said, so everything you got left over by building this new neighborhood, give to us. Everything. We built a park with that. So first of all, we got a lot of ground, a lot of earth, because they were digging the houses and the cellars and the foundations, and we got all this earth. So we made this spatial framework and said it's going to be a park in 3 layers. We start building this earth, and you can already use it at the same time. And these were the 3 layers. Main path, we didn't know exactly where it would go, but that will be the future. There's a meandering path. We have these elements of earth we like to use to make compartments and spatially interesting parks, and also this adventurous park. Go down, slide down the hill, go through an alley, go up and go down. We made a model. We made 1,000 models, by the way. And this was the plan. They said, this is your park. Of course, we had to convince the politicians that this could be nice. And we showed them pictures, and we also said we don't want all your money at once, so give us only half. We use the other half in the next 5 years. They liked that. And we start building. So we start building, start using this earth and start making our spatial framework. And of course, we showed people how it could be, because mainly the parts we're going to make is done by recycled materials. Everything that came out of this neighborhood and later on came out of the city of Utrecht, we start using and building the park from. That was the idea. So the park will build itself in 5 to 6 years, together with the people using it and reacting on that. So we also would be there as a landscape architect for 6 years, on site, working with the people. That was the idea. We showed this kind of pictures where we can use containers and bridges and small interventions. What could we do with objects we found? How do we deal with the plants? We also said, parts of the plants we can buy, parts of the plants we do crowdfunding. We asked people to come in with plants. Look, we start building. We got materials from building. Slowly, the first houses were built. And when people buy a house, they first spend the money on the house. Then the year after, they spend the house on the interior. The year after, they spend the money on the garden. So after 3 years, they start looking outside the house and in the park. So we had to get them out of the houses. We start making our treasure room. So we got stuff from builders, from companies. We got old bridges from the city of Utrecht, and we start collecting them all over the city. If there was something left over, they would give us a call and said, can you use it? And we made models, and again, how to integrate. This is a scouting house, bridges. We made public fora. We asked the people to come in, give their ideas, help us. You can see we start building, we start planting, we made a playground. The big sponsor gave us the big piece of metal as a gateway to the park. And you can slowly, they were finished with the houses. We found old asphalt. We start making this, and suddenly it became a plant that nobody ever saw there for many years. Came up beautiful. This was the beautifully unexpected. Nobody understood that by putting this asphalt here, the water couldn't go, and suddenly we had this kind of swampy area with beautiful plants. You can see here, the houses are slowly finishing. The park is slowly building. We started here and we're going that way. All this ground and all this earthwork was for free, because we got it for free. We used stones we got from entrepreneurs. We used these things to make paths, to make retaining walls, plant trees. We got from a bulb nursery. We got 100,000 narcissus for free. We planted them. And you can see slowly, we're almost in the end. Playgrounds where we were building, the paths you come. We made things here, a little harbor here. And then it all went wrong. Because the essence of this plan was that we are designing, we are building, and we are maintaining it at the same time, because it's growing. And this is something that authorities cannot arrange. Politicians like it, but the commune, how do you call it, the city of Utrecht, they have a planning department, they have a building department, realization projects, and they got a maintenance department. And there are 3 different departments with 3 different budgets, with 3 different politicians. So it's impossible to get them. We tried for 3 years to get them to work together, because that's the real length. That's using this time as your tool. We didn't want to design it first completely, then build it completely, and then start maintaining it, because we cannot react. It's not dynamic anymore. And this was not happening. So we were designing, somebody was building, and at the same time, if there was rubbish or something fell down, the maintenance department said, yeah, we're not coming because you're still building. And the building guy said, yeah, now you should stop designing because we are building. This went on and this kills every dynamic planning. That's also why I'm so angry about these traditional zoning plans. They kill all innovation. Also here, so we just had to stop, and to be honest, these were people that living there, and they say, it really says, this is not a park, this is a terrible thing. And we agreed with them, because we fought so hard and tried so hard to get it working with them. But the city said, no, we cannot do that, so let's do a competition. Do you want to join? No, no way, we're not going to join. And this plan won. It's the same area, and he said, you know, a park has to do with nature. Nature is flowers. It's a flower. Yeah, they just completely rebulldozed it, and now it's a park. So that was the first project that failed. Second one that failed, but it was a nice experiment, and still we learned so many good things about that project. So it failed, and we said, maybe we, you know, if it doesn't work for Utrecht in this park, maybe we can go. Let's try a little bit bigger. And we were asked together with Max One, urbanist in Rotterdam, to make a plan for the Cross River Park in London. It's east side of London, Cross River Park, and what we were asked to do is a delivery, management, and maintenance of the Cross River Park, a feasibility study. Is it possible to make a park in the middle of London where everybody thinks this is the most terrible spot of London? It's there. Eastgate's Thames Gateway. It's here, very close by the city centre, almost in the landing tracks of the city airport of London. Thinking about our workshop, our workshop this time, where the airplanes of Lenato almost touched our project site. Same here. You can see here the East London green grid, and this was the area where we were asked to make a feasibility study. Again, you can see here the area, and this is really the worst spot of London. You know, everything you don't want to have in your city is here. Gasworks, sewer system, more sewer system, industrial area. This is a big polluted landfill area. This is the most high guarded prisoner, Belmont prison of London, where all the terrorists are. This is really one of the biggest ghettos where you don't want to walk in. This is all, and then some in the trajectory of the landing tracks of the airport. Pipelines coming there. Terrible. So how could you make a park? You know, it is a beautiful site. Maybe only as a landscape architect or an architect or a designer you can see how beautiful the site is. But it looked like this. The mud flats of the Thames River, the big tidal difference, and it's only fences. Again, that's why I'm showing it, because our workshop here, you know, we went to these industrial areas. The only thing that's dominating in these areas are fences and cameras. It's the same here. Everything is closed in, fenced in, blocked off, crossed by big infrastructure, the gasworks, this kind of anonymous industrial areas, tanks, infrastructure, desolated riverbanks, not public accessible. And the idea was so simple. I got these two sides completely isolated, not connected with anything. On both sides of the river, maybe we should see the river as a metaphor of being in the middle of the park and making it to this green Cross River Park, connecting and fixing the green grid. At that time, there was an idea to make a new bridge to connect the M10 highway around London and use this bridge and its infrastructure again to open the spot and make the spot accessible. And then in that area start making a green area that we can read as a Cross River Park. And then close this important line in the green framework of London. You can see it here. So the first half year of our study we didn't start drawing, we just start analyzing. We just, like I asked you to do only today, just think and see what's happening and examine all the data and what's going on. And the only thing we try to do is making connections. Is it possible That and there were two words: sustainability and education. Those two are for us the keywords. Is it possible, by example, that Tesco, it's a huge, big shopping mall, IKEA, and what we saw yesterday again, but then bigger and big parking areas that are always full except on Sunday, then they're empty. Could we combine them maybe on some urban farming and a 3-star restaurant and use the parking lots on the Sunday for the farmers market? Can the Belmarsh prison, the prisoners, can they help in this urban farm? And together we make the schools, and can the schools and the school gardens be helped with the prisoners? We heard that was not a very good idea, but it was too high end prisoners. But can we have biodiversity reserves from the gas works? Can they take care of fueling Belmarsh prison, so they can have the heating and all the systems from the sewer system? So we start only by talking to all the stakeholders and making possible connections. Who's interested in whom? You know, it's like organizing all individual things, and that's also, I think, one of the things we should do here in our workshop area, is where we cannot just start drawing arrows and lines and let's break this up here and let it open and get rid of this one and throw this one out. We should find strategies where we can say, if we want to have this more open or more transparent or more connected, what can we offer him that he will move somewhere else? It should be a benefit for him as well, or her, or for this company, or for this farmer. People only because you don't own the land most of the time. Here, the land was almost not owned by the city. So we just have to enthusiast and talk to the stakeholders that it's in their own interest to work with this. Sometimes the interest is interest, and sometimes the interest is money. Convince them that it's better off if they do things together. And like you know, many kids don't even know that milk comes from a cow. No? Especially in London, they had a research of this. 35% of the children didn't know that milk comes from a cow. It comes from the supermarket. Or how food is made, or how you can enjoy good food. Again, directing. You know, you make a script and you slowly start doing it by small steps, and the actors will join. So what we did, we made a plan where we slowly start opening the only little corridors we already have with existing residential areas. We start connecting it, making it going through. And this is the idea. The concept is, I've got all these areas which are privately owned. Industry, this is neighborhood, industry. There are a couple of areas that are maybe UDP designs, made that they are where the city has an influence in. So we start connecting them, and we start asking these people to give us 10 meters of their land. And if you want to develop here, or as an industrial area you want to do something here, that's possible, but your fence should be 10 meters in, and preferably not a fence. And so much percent of the land you give to the general cause. So every time, if you want to do a new development, investing in something, or you want to, in your own benefit, you also give something to the general idea. And by using all these small points of connections, slowly you can grow a park, which in the park are all these neighborhoods, industrial areas integrated. It can be 3 meters, it can be 6 meters, and sometimes 12 meters. That's all we're asking. And this based on first 3 years, 5, 1 to 15, and later on. And we made the whole financial and organizational models as well. So we made the whole cash flow diagrams. We made financial proposals. We together, of course, with consultants, we make calculations of estimated profit. How do you start an organization like this? Because it's a big organization. Which people do you need? And it starts with opening the area. You know, start organizing art routes. Start organizing events. Start making it aware that there is an area that maybe could be interesting. Start opening the small routes. Make a parasailing parachute every year as an event. Start using this gasworks area and opening it up. Making small interventions in the landscape of the beautiful ecological places along the mudland, opening up the small things, making viewing platforms. Slowly, small interventions. Slowly start negotiating with the sewer system and the gasworks if we can have parts of their riverbanks and making them open to the public. And instead of that, they do this and allow this, maybe they get something back in their own interest. Maybe they can expand or try to change something or make a bigger parking lot. I mean, it is, you know, it's almost like dealing. You have to start giving and taking, and to make everybody enthusiastic that they start working together. Again, using the parking lot, which is empty, in the Sunday, start using them as a farmer market. And making that in combination with a restaurant. And the sewer systems, they want to redo the sewer system and be the best case sewer system of the world. And making it also open to the public and a museum of sewer system museum. Which is nice, but let's connect that with a public path. Instead of that you own your own museum, let's say a museum on a public path that other people can pass by and visit your museum. This way. And also there's people that come here, they don't only come for the museum, but it has a spin-off to this restaurant. And maybe they make a walk to this riverbank. So we're only connecting people together. And then of course the Olympics would be in London, and let's use these gas containers and you fly in with your plane and already see that here is a very special spot. And this new bridge, let's ask the architects that makes this bridge, that it's not just a bridge, and under the bridge is just a waste of space, but he should, we are more interested in the programming of the bottom of this bridge than in the top. And it should be this high because this is the biggest boat they got from the Marine in London, and in case of war it should be completely in the middle of the center next to the Thames Tower. So the bridge is extremely high because this flight deck ship should be able to pass the bridge. So the underside of the bridge was more interesting than the top. And this landfill area, why can we not just leave it there but reshape it and make the biggest amphitheater with view on the Thames, where people have performances and rock concerts. So people come there and it's a destination again. Now it's a landfill with low cost investments. This is the plan. We wrote this all down. We made a timeline in combination with the Olympics. We started with small things: temporary rainwater storage, treatment system, small cleaning sinks for the water, accessibility for invalid people and for bikes, making small intersections where it was dead ends, this market, opening the water, small and bigger and bigger and bigger. We all made this in a management plan, calculated it, and this was the plan. And then it failed. It stopped because London got the Olympics. They were selected to do the Olympic Games, and all the projects in London stopped and all the money went to the Olympics. We presented it. Everybody was very enthusiastic. It is in a lot of the framework plans of London. It's nominated as a project, Cross River Park. And then Olympic Game came and everything stopped for many years. So I hope one day they will call again. So it's it all starts by looking and feeling its place. Thank you very much.
Bene. Abbiamo ancora un po' di tempo per fare qualche domanda. Some questions?
Io volevo chiedere, we saw great movement of art, no? With the movement of earth. And I know that the movement of earth is it's not cheap, no, it's very expensive. And so how is it possible that in Holland you can make all these kind of work?
Because it's a good question, because what I said, this was the park and the neighborhood was around it, and for building these houses you should dig, so you got a lot of earth.
Yeah.
And normally you have to transport this earth to another place, and you have to pay a big truck that brings it maybe 30 kilometers away, and you have to dump it somewhere. Sometimes it also costs money. So we just made calculations to the builders and said, if you bring it here and put it on the right side, as we like it, you don't have to pay. So they made partly, they paid for it themselves. That was the idea. So it didn't always work, because sometimes they thought it was very clever of them to give us a little bit polluted ground. No? They sneaked in some dirty stuff as well. So we had to take it away again. But the idea was it paid itself. If you want to get rid of your earth, you don't have to drive 30 kilometers with a big truck and expensive. This is only 3 minutes away. Dump it and you can use the truck again. So again, with everything you want to do and there is no money, you can be, for a part, idealistic and believe in your dream. The only way to get somebody moving, like example, the farmer we spoke, he's interested in his business, and that's fair. That's also good. You know, his business is his life. The only reason that he would like to cooperate maybe in a plan that we are interested in is to give him something that he's happy and that he gives something back to us. So it is collaborating, it's exchanging interest. Except instead of saying, no, you're not allowed to build there, you should do there. Then nothing works. It's organizing all the initiatives.
Qualche altra domanda?
Io faccio in italiano, quindi ho bisogno di tradurre. Faccio una domanda provocatoria, forse, non lo so. Nel senso, per esempio, il primo progetto che lui ci ha fatto vedere, poi non è andato a buon fine perché appunto la gente voleva il parco bello e pronto invece di avere un processo partecipato. E quindi lei ci ha spiegato che c'è un problema consistente di relazione con la politica, in questo senso. Allora dico, un'esperienza di questo tipo non potrebbe farci pensare che fosse la strada della partecipazione così a questo livello, evidentemente non funziona, cioè non è la strada giusta visto che poi ci confrontiamo sempre con la politica.
Because the first project with the collaboration between the people and politicians and the park project didn't go okay. And maybe this way is not the correct solution to create a park. I mean, collaboration, too much collaboration probably is not good.
Yeah, maybe you're right, because it failed. At the same time, that's also why I call it an experiment. I thought it was a very worthwhile experiment. The collaboration was not that. Normally in Holland, the collaboration in a way, or participation, is that you make a drawing. You show at an evening like this, you show your drawing to the people, they can make remarks. You don't do anything with the remark. You plan this evening on a football evening, so you know that not everybody is coming. And people cannot read a map. So normally, you know, and you ask people what they want, and they said, yeah, I like to make a walk, I like to sit in a park, I like to read a book. Huh? We made inventories about all these projects, and reading a book in a park is always on number one. And I never saw in Holland somebody reading in a park. Never. So it's also because people don't know what else is possible. So in this plan, we had, before we even did anything, we had evenings with the people, the future residents. They would come in and they bought a house, they were not living there. And we had these meetings, and we showed them parks from all over the world. And we showed them what is more possible than just reading a book or feeding a duck. Huh? And to be honest, that worked very well. So we had a very good group of enthusiastic people from the beginning, 20 people that did the whole project along. So the how do you call it? The influence of the inhabitants was very well. It was really the thing that frustrated the whole project, was that the municipality, they cannot think in three things at the same time. You know, it's completely in the also in the world of architecture. So you cannot design, build, and maintain at the same time. You can do that with a park. You can do that with an urban plan. You can do that with a landscape plan. And so I think it's more the process, how we think about how buildings and how projects should be built, is the one that didn't make it work. The influence of the people and the inhabitants was, to be honest, quite well in this project.
Like us. Like us.
Yeah. So it's
Una domanda io, allora, una domanda riguardo la funzione. Non so se ho capito bene. Nel secondo progetto ho visto che all'interno del parco c'erano tante funzioni, alcune esistenti, poi c'era la restaurazione, tante cose differenti. Nel primo progetto mi è sembrato capire che invece c'era un discorso sulla permeabilità di questi spazi che però non avevano una funzione forte dentro. Quindi la domanda è in un parco urbano, perché funzioni, perché si è vissuto, c'è necessità di avere una funzione oppure il parco è di per sé qualcosa di attrattivo per la sua bellezza, non per le funzioni contiene?
It's more proper for a park to have one, be a multi-purpose park, or just to have one strong function, because you said the second project didn't go good as well. And so, what was the real problem? I mean, it's you need probably it's better off to start with a strong function or have many multi-purpose minor functions.
I think there are two answers to that question. The second plan, the Cross River Park, it didn't went along because the Olympics came and all the funding was stopped. All the money went to the Olympic Games. Everybody was very enthusiastic about the project. We even presented it to people high up in the politics of London, and everybody really liked the idea. Also, what I said, the plan is in all the policy plans of London. It's integrated. So the plan didn't work because they got the Olympics and all the money went there. The second answer is that in an area like this, where 90% of the land is privately owned, it's very difficult to come with one strong function. How should you do that? You know, you only can mobilize these forces and these privately landowners. You can move them by giving them something that they feel better about and add to your idea. So the function is quite difficult. The theme is possible. What I said, the diagram with all the arrows, we have two themes: sustainability and education. Learning people in London how beautiful this site is, learning them about nature, learning them about how their sewer water is cleaned, learning about that where the gas comes from, learning about that there's a farmers market, maybe even learning them that there's terrorists in this prison. Yeah? And of course sustainability, and do that in a way that you help the environment instead of just making it worse. And maybe we can transform some of these industry areas in a little bit cleaner way. So those two words were the general idea, but a general function we could not. We didn't own the land. Nobody owned the land. It's not. We had to start at the bottom and get everybody moving a little bit. Is that answering your question?
Yes, but just my question is that maybe a park without a function, and urban park where the people go just to stay together because the park is beautiful, not because they can find a restaurant or something.
Yeah, but
urban park nowadays.
I think in a way, you know, that works if you make a park in a residential area, or you make a like Central Park, you make a park in the middle of New York. You know, you don't have to do so much to make that a success. It's you make a green paradise in the middle of Manhattan, it always works. This was something else. This was an area where we like to connect on a bigger scale green structures together. Also for the biodiversity, an area where it's scary to go, and slowly open that for people and making the connections. Then I think you need to trigger people to go there. You need things in there that people start going there and saying, this is beautiful. Oh, this is nice. I can see something here I haven't seen before. Maybe I should bring my friends next time. So I'm not saying that this is a recipe for all the parks. This is a recipe for here. You know, I just took a walk through this neighborhood here, and in the middle is this park, this square, and then you got this park going up a little bit. And on both sides are all these houses, and there's some playgrounds in the park. I'm saying it doesn't matter so much how that park looks. It will be used anyway, because it's the only place to go, where people go, walk. If you make some grass, you make some playgrounds, it always works. I don't need extra things there, because it's feed from all sides. An area like this, you never come. So every park needs its own strategy. There's no blueprint.
So, more questions? It's okay. Oh, thank you. Bene, allora concludiamo questa conferenza di Brands con l'augurio di rivederci tra un mese circa, l'8 maggio 2014 avremo la conferenza di Roger Narboni, Illuminare il paesaggio. Quindi arrivederci.